Up until now, we've been looking at the relationship of our ability to eat pretty much through the lens of whether or not God will feed us. That's sort of the focus of this bracha, it seems to be. We did have one sidestep on that, which was the challenge that the widow from Tzarfat was also hungry. She and her son. And she reaches out to Elijah in order to feed her, who then reaches out to God. But there is sort of a human-to-human interaction there for a moment. But pretty much we've been speaking about God as the source of the sustenance for those who are hungry. And yesterday when we looked at the story of Choni, for sure that was the dynamic, right? The people are in a drought and they go to Choni to speak to God, and the entire dynamic is between Choni and God. But what I wanted to look at today is sort of to end our look at this bracha is the other side of the coin, which is what's the relationship that people have to other people in a situation of scarcity. And it gets back, we start with this question that we've encountered already going back to a couple of brachot ago, which is, why is this bracha in this spot in the Amidah? We did that with Geula, with the blessing on redemption. Why is redemption in the bracha number 7 spot in the order? You would have expected it to follow the bracha of refuah, of healing, but actually they're reversed. And then we had the answer of, well, because redemption comes in the 7th cycle. So there's something about the number 7 that's sort of intimately connected to the bracha of redemption. So that's why it ended up being number 7, not because of anything that preceded it in terms of themes. And then we also got the same thing in the last bracha with refuah. Why is refuah number 8? Because refuah can refer to the healing from the Brit Milah, and Brit Milah is done on the 8th day. So now we're going to get the same question with our bracha. Why is Birkat ha-Shanim number 9? And it's interesting because the section in the Gemara, both in the Babylonian Talmud and the Rishalmi, sort of run through the entire Amidah, and almost always their answer to the question of why are we saying this bracha now is because the last bracha led into it. But what we see here in these middle brachot is that it's less about the relationship between brachot and more about the relationship to the number. So what's special about the number 9, and how is that related to our bracha? That's what we're going to look at as a way into what's the connection between people supporting each other in times of need. Umara ulomar Birkat ha-Shanim b'Tzi'it. Why do we say this blessing about the years in the 9th spot in our Amidah? So we have the suggestion from Rabbi Alexandri, Kineged mafki'ei she'arim. This is to correspond to, or in reference to, those who raise the prices of food, those who break the market, as it were. And Safari explains, we pray for rain so that the price of produce will not rise as a result of shortages. You could imagine such a thing when you can't, supply and demand, when you don't have enough of the product, then the price goes up. And there are those who are willing to raise the price to take advantage of the fact that there is no rain and therefore a shortage. Now, what does it have to do with the number 9? So we're going to get two different answers, one from the Bavli, one from the Yerushalmi. So the Bavli brings the following proof, which is Dichtiv Shavor Zeroa Rasha. We have a verse in the book of Psalms where David asks God to break the arm of the evil ones. Okay, that seems pretty far-fetched in terms of a connection to those who break the markets, but maybe not. We're going to see the word zroa, bal zroa, someone who has a strong arm is often someone who's using their might, but not for good, using their might to control sources of capital that otherwise should be shared. David. So what does that do with the number 9? It doesn't really explain because it comes from Psalms 10. And David ki amra b'tzi'it amra. So Rabbi Alexandria explains when David, the author of the book of Psalms, when he said this line, he said it in the 9th Psalm. Now, he just said it was in the 10th Psalm, but the truth is in some ancient countings, the first and the second Psalm were combined and therefore the 10th psalm is really the 9th psalm, and so we're getting to the 9th spot in the bracha. So you have to connect a few dots, but it seemed like they really wanted to connect the number 9, which is where we are in terms of the bracha, to these people who are manipulating the market and taking advantage of scarcity. Now you get a similar approach in the Yerushalmi, another tradition from what Rabbi Alexandri said, but a little bit different in terms of the number 9. Amar Rabbi Alexandri, why do we put our bracha as the 9th bracha, as the bracha that's in the 9th spot? Kineged, that's to correspond to Kol Adonai Shover Arazim. Now, you know from Psalms 29, we usually say on Friday night, that we say the line Kol Adonai, the voice of God will shatter the cedars, these massive trees that you find in Lebanon, Shover Arazim. And then Rabbi Alexandri explains, Shehu Atid L'Shaber Kol Ba'alei Sha'arim. Apparently, Arazim, the cedars, is not a literal understanding of trees, but rather the Ba'alei Sha'arim, those who are the masters of the market. And in the future, God is going to break them down. They will not be the most powerful people anymore. What does this have to do with the number 9? Because in the Psalms, in Psalms 29, the word Yud He Vav He, God's name, actually comes 18 times. And it's one of the reasons, according to the Talmud, that there are 18 blessings in the Amidah is to correspond to the 18 mentions of God's name in that psalm. And I mean that it's a pretty short psalm, so it's if you remember it from singing it on Friday night, it's pretty. It stands out that God's name is said over and over again. So this is the 9th time. If you just count Yud He Vav He, if you count through the psalm, this is the 9th mention of God's name. So Kol Adonai Shover Arazim. And this is actually, I think, in some ways, a nicer relationship to the number 9, because this psalm is already connected to the Amidah. So they're just sort of linking what is number 9, what is the 9th bracha, the 9th mention of God's name, have to do with food, and it has to do with a world in which Shover Arazim, God is going to sort of break down the inequality that exists from people who sort of hoard and control the market. And that's sort of connected to this number 9. I'm going to bring one last text on this theme that's related to the content of our bracha, if not the specifics of our bracha, which is a midrash that's asking, how does rain come to the world? This is could be connected to our bracha, or could be connected to Morid HaGeshem, the mention of rain that we have in the second bracha. So on a verse in Proverbs chapter 30, verse 4, Mi alala shamayim, who will go up to the heaven and back down? The midrash says, Mihu zeh shetfilato olela shamayim umoridag shamim. Who is it whose their prayer will go up to the heavens, and as a result of their prayer, the rain will come down? And the answer that they have is Zeh shehu mechalek masrotav b'chofnav. Shehu morid tal umatar leolam. There's our phrase. Tein tal umatar leolam. Tein tal umatar. Who's the one who's going to give the tal umatar? Here, it's a person, a human, whose prayer is effective because they are distributing the tithes with their chofnav, with their fistfuls. They're giving fistfuls of food away, and as a result of their giving, that's how the rain is going to come down. If you remember way back in the second blessing, we looked at the stories of those people who brought rain during a drought by reciting Mashiv Aruch, Morid HaGeshem, and then the rabbis in the room asked them, well, what's your profession? What do you do? How did you merit to bring down the rain? And they say, oh, I'm the one who teaches kids, and I make sure every kid is fed. Or I'm the one who goes around and makes sure that even poor people have wine for Havdalah and Kiddush. So there's something about the actions that I do below the giving of the tithe, the tithing, that's going to morid tal umatar leolam, that's going to bring down dew and rain to the world. And they connect this to the word chofnav, to the fistfuls that is mentioned in the further part of the verse from Proverbs. And then we get the opposite. Who is the one whose tefillah whose prayer does not go up to heaven and does not bring down the rain. The one who doesn't give tithes is the one who's preventing the rain from coming down, and that's the reason that there's a drought. So whereas in the stories that we had with Choni, there's no explanation of why there's a drought, although there's a little bit of a hint. Shimon ben Shetach says, well, maybe there's a drought because God is trying to send us a message, and you would have messed it up because there's a drought for a reason. But here we get the reason for the drought. The reason for the scarcity is because people are not being generous with or following the rule around tithing. So what we have here is sort of a vision of our bracha, the ninth bracha, that has to do not only with humans and their relationship to God, but rather the connection between humans and other humans, and the ways in which we are or are not supporting our fellow people with the ability that we have with either access or control of the market, or our ability to give away 10%.